What is capital punishment? Capital punishment is a form of punishment where an individual is executed and sentenced to death for a specific crime that they have performed. The court and the judge decide this sentence after a legal trial that outlines and explains to a defendant why these extreme measures are called for. This is determined either by a judge or a jury. In some states, the death penalty is decided by the jury rather than the judge.
Methods of execution. Lethal injection. A toxic chemical is put in a syringe and inserted in an individual's arm where the individual dies within 5 to 18 minutes. Lethal gas. A gas chamber where an individual sits in a chair with a gas tank of sulfuric acid is released. A stethoscope is fixed on the inmate and the doctor outside the chamber is listening to their heartbeat and announces the death. Electrocution. The individual is strapped in an electrocution chair. The individual is given a jolt of 500 to 2000 volts. If the individual survives the first jolt, it is repeated until the individual is dead. Hanging noose. The individual has the hanging noose wrapped around their neck while standing over a trapdoor. Once given the signal, the trapdoor is open and the individual falls straight through and hangs until death. Firing squad. The inmate is strapped in the chair with sandbags around them to absorb the blood. A doctor locates the inmate's heart and places a white target cloth where 5 armed shooters are required to shoot at the target.
Why is it done? There are a number of reasons why this sort of punishment takes place, as each country has rules and morals in their legal system. If breached, will result in the capital punishment. Some crimes listed under capital punishment can be murder, country of treason, drug trafficking and smuggling, adultery and rape, and these are all considered capital crimes in most countries. However, why is this punishment abolished in some countries? The death penalty is an irreversible punishment. To make the decision to take someone's life due to a crime they can simply serve their time in jail does not serve justice, but rather is vengeance. There are some countries that have official religions such as Islam and Christianity, where their religions state that it is forbidden to take on the role of God in taking one's life. Therefore, those countries do not practice capital punishment. Despite religion, others think it is purely unethical.
Current literature on capital punishment. Colorado became the 22nd state to abolish the death penalty. The growing coronavirus global pandemic, reaching 163 countries and more than 15,000 deaths, has at least temporarily saved 2 condemned men from execution in Texas. With more delays sought elsewhere, the pandemic has also stopped trials in which the death penalty was being sought. In addition to halting executions, the coronavirus has also disturbed an exoneration. Robert Downham, executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center, did not find the delay surprising. In Texas, jury selection for a death penalty trial in San Antonio were halted for 30 days.
Ethical implications. The capital punishment undermines a lot of ethical implications against an individual sentenced for this punishment. Invalid consent. Once the judge decides you will receive the death penalty, no one is allowed to defend or speak up and reject this punishment. In a sense, no individual would accept and consent to this form of punishment and ultimately be willing to die. Everybody has a right to live. Every human life has value to it, and everybody has a right to live regardless of his or her criminal acts. There are other ways to address and punish the criminal, but taking their life isn't one of them. This punishment is cruel, inhumane, and degrading. In many countries, the execution is performed in front of others, and the individual is humiliated before they die. They are degraded and used as an example for wrongdoing. This is completely unethical and against one's will to be shamed in such an inhumane way.
Clinical implications. Doctors. Doctors do not directly inject or perform the execution. However, doctors are required to assess and announce the death of the inmate after the execution has taken place. Later on, doctors must place the body in a body bag and send it to the medical examiner where an autopsy is performed. The participation of a doctor is important to have professional reassurance that the inmate has in fact died, and the best judgment and knowledge is given when performing the autopsy. Psychologists. In some cases, inmates may not be responsible for their actions, or they can be wrongfully convicted of a crime due to their mental health. The involvement of psychologists can help the court identify any undermining factors such as history of illness and current medical health disabilities, or even social and family factors that influence the crime that the individual did. The use of psychologists can explain the mental state of the individual to help excuse and refrain judges from imposing the death penalty. Physicians. In 400 BC, an oath was created for physicians. When graduating into the occupation, one must swear by the gods that they will use their knowledge and judgment to do good and not use their power to perform evil. This is called the Oath of Hippocrates. Some physicians refuse to participate in the capital punishment because it is unethical. Medical professionals in the 21st century also swear by a modernist oath similar to the Oath of Hippocrates. Hence why many refuse to participate in the death penalty.
Professional implications. Lawyers. Lawyers have an immense responsibility and weight on their shoulders when they are presented with a case of capital punishment. Some lawyers have described the responsibility of trying to prevent an execution as a tremendous weight that is with them constantly. Being a lawyer for a death penalty case is stressful and can have lasting impacts even on the professionals who deal with it. Many lawyers are prohibited from witnessing a client's execution. Some prefer not to be present for the execution as this feels like a burden that they shouldn't defend. Judges. A judge who is ruling a case of capital punishment holds tremendous responsibility and pressure as they have the most important role in the court, which gives them the power to make the final decision. The judge can be held accountable if somebody is wrongly convicted of a crime and then sentenced to death. Judges must consider a number of things when working with a case with a possible outcome of the death penalty and must use reasoning and logic to make the correct and final decision. Prison guards. Prison guards are seriously impacted by capital punishment as they have to witness the executions. Like murder, execution inflicts emotional and psychological damage on those linked to it. This can begin with anticipatory trauma when a court sets an execution date, and the impact can remain even years after an execution. Prison guards who most closely interact with condemned prisoners on a daily basis are particularly affected, including and especially those acting as executioners. The death penalty compounds the anxiety and depression to which prison guards are already especially vulnerable.
The debatable issue here is, does the death penalty serve justice? Justice is served to families that suffered from the loss of their loved ones. By condoning the death penalty, it puts criminals away for good. Some may say that once one has taken a life, does this mean they have the right to keep their own life? The answer to that is life is a gift, and having a murderer sit in a prison cell is just as enough for the family or the individual who suffered from this heinous crime. By acting tough on crime, it would be less likely for a crime to be committed.
Against murder. Criminal liability contributes to restoring social justice, holding an individual accountable for their actions and allowing them to be placed in a prison for a number of years to reflect and suffer for what they have done is far more effective in comparison to just killing them. Capital punishment completely defeats the purpose of allowing criminals to experiment this rehabilitation and takes away their human rights. Capital punishment is a form of vengeance rather than justice.
Unqualified jury. The decision to place someone under the death penalty is an irreversible punishment. Therefore, it is inappropriate to put this judgment in the hands of a jury that stems from the greater public. The jury are underqualified individuals who lack criminal and legal knowledge, so to give them the opportunity to have an input on someone's end of life is ridiculous. Sometimes criminals are wrongly convicted and sentenced to death by the unqualified jury.
The opinion of the death penalty vary between populations. Most will arguably agree that no human deserves to die, even if they've committed murder. Others may say that it is more cost-effective to use a capital punishment as opposed to having criminals in life imprisonment. Each individual has a right to live. As we can see through statistics, there were many on death row that were taken off death row due to the fact that they never even committed the crime in the first place and were placed on death row. Is justice served by killing off the prisoner? In many cases of the death penalty, innocent lives are lost due to a corrupted justice system, killing those who did not in fact commit the crime they were thought to have committed. In most cases, it is clear revenge and not justice. By Australia maintaining to keep the death penalty illegal, keeps our justice system ethical, and provides justice by making the life imprisonment the toughest punishment in Australia.
Capital punishment can be defined by justice by some and can also be defined as revenge. Although there are many implications that come with capital punishment, most affecting the individual that is sentenced to death, as well as the overall ethics that are not seen within capital punishment. You see that within a corrupt justice system, the death penalty can be seen as unethical as the wrong people are being convicted, or just the fact that no one deserves to die, no matter the circumstance. Thank you for listening. Okay.